Hello again. We are here today to discuss various environmental issues with Brother Yaseva, the founder of Joyism. Just like the previous episode, we hope that this will be an interesting episode with a lot of insights as to how we can tackle various issues in our society. Thank you, Brother Yaseva, for being with us here today again. In our previous episode, we were discussing about various environmental issues, civic issues, and how your NGO is taking steps to make a difference and transform our society. But those were all at a very micro level. But we see that these issues and challenges are at a bigger level too, at the global level. So, what steps do you think that your NGO is planning to take or already taking, in addressing this issue at a larger level?
Yes, as you rightly said, whatever the environment problems which we are facing are the impacts are seen at a global level, and the causes are also at a global level. Now, if I were to answer your question in some sort of a priority, I would say that a shift of consciousness would be the greatest motivating factor, where I had mentioned about our movement to create joy cities. So we have been working quite closely with the scriptures as guiding posts for our work, in the sense, in Habakkuk 2:14, it is said that the knowledge of the glory of God will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. Now, we have taken that as the knowledge of the joy of God. The glory on earth of God is the love and the peace which we see, and joy. So, how are we able to create joy cities around the world would be a great way in which we could sensitize, because it's not something which can happen only in Chennai, because we see climate change, it's a global problem. So it's because of the advancement of the Western nations, the developed nations, the overconsumption. That's the main reason why the planet is suffering. The polar caps are melting, and if the polar caps are melting in the north and south, it's going to affect our own Marina Beach, which will get swallowed up. So it's all connected. So having a vision to convert cities into joy cities, so citizens are able to respond or elevate their consciousness to be joyful, which means consider others' interests. So that's a very powerful guiding post which you have taken from the prophecy of Habakkuk. So these are very interesting, because this is the way God has shown. There's a lot of material which talk of apocalyptic, apocalypse kind of issues, where you're talking of destruction and this is going to be destroyed. But we have not focused on the good things which God has also shown. The good things, that His glory will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. That's a very positive future He connects. So how could we work towards this future? And in Isaiah 9:6, it says that the government will be on His shoulder. They'll call Him Wonderful Counselor, and of His kingdom there shall be no end. So if you look at that verse, just like I had mentioned in the previous episode about the mandate God gave Adam, so this is something we get from the Son of God directly, the second Adam, because Isaiah is talking about that. Normally we see that in Christmas time, this verse which I quoted, to us a son is born, wonderful counselor, mighty God, government will be on his shoulder. So we should, as Christians, take governance on our shoulder. We should be able to guide the nations into this, because it is because of improper governance that most of the problems of the world are. The nexus between the government and the business people, which people call as crony capitalism. You must have heard of that word, where the business and the political people come together and they win, but the earth suffers. It's a win-win for them, but the earth suffers. So we have a phrase, so it should be win-win-win. So all should win. So which means we need to bring governance at the street level. We need to get people to start looking at it, because it's not just changing leaders, which is very difficult. So we are working on how to have this model which we are creating in Chennai to be used in other cities, because all cities are the same. They have streets, they have homes, they have, the problems may differ, but definitely they have to also, now if you see the carbon footprint, India is a poor nation. Majority have a very small carbon footprint. That is the energy each one uses, which is called a carbon. Now USA have a huge carbon footprint. So because they use a lot of energy for transportation, their heating and all that. So it is so we can't just sit and say, okay, we'll do this. So we are working to see in a later date, we are making the connections in G20 countries, which are the most developed nations in the world, to see how they could take these aspects. Because it is, I think we are very honored and humbled that God has used Joyism to bring out these things to other nations. These soft skills and this vision is not there in other countries also. So we have a great opportunity to take good governance, which, as I said, people should take up participatory, so that they are able to get involved. Then there is another big issue which we talk about once again in Isaiah, which talks about beating swords into plowshare. You must have heard of that verse in 2:4, I think it comes, where he says that they will beat their swords into plowshare. Of course, in the times of Isaiah in 500 BC, it was just swords which are used as armaments. But now it's not swords, it's all missiles and guns and rockets and submarines. So that sword has become, so kind of pervasive, so that it evades, and they know how to make bombs and fling it from the sea and the air and water, and it's all become sophisticated. They do it in terms of calling it defense, but actually it's very offensive. To make these equipments, to make these things, a lot of resources are used, and a lot of people are employed in destructive work. You know what I'm trying to say. So if they could be channelized to work for redeeming the planet, for safeguarding and protecting the planet, making the planet green, renewing it, I believe a lot of things. And God has given us a signpost and says they will beat their swords into plowshare. So our hope is that we want to work towards that and see how platforms can be created. In fact, we are trying to create, working on a platform called Earth Renewal Investment Company, because there is no platform where people who want to do these things can work out of. So ERIC, we are calling it, Earth Renewal Investment Company, to get investments so that Christians would stop working in companies making swords and missiles and guns. There must be millions of Christians employed, and for them to come and start giving their skills to Plowshare, to see how carbon capturing can be done, how so many other technologies, so many other ways are there they could research, and God, if we ask God, God will give us the wisdom to move ahead. So I believe that is a very potent way which things could happen on a global level. So it's a very futuristic idea, but that is the way to go, because at no point can we lose hope. And perhaps one last thing is in Matthew 5:5 he says, the meek shall inherit the earth. It is not the powerful or the nation with the most amount of weapons. It's not the mighty God says the meek. So meek is not cowardice. Meek is not,
It's
you
not
know,
a weakness.
yes, meekness takes a lot of courage, like to turn the other cheek, or to, it takes a lot of courage. So to practice meekness, because he clearly says the meek will inherit the earth. It's not the most powerful weapon, nation with most amount of weapons is going to inherit the earth. So the verses can't go wrong. So one of our intentions is to promote meekness for people, because if they want to inherit the earth, that's what God says. I'm not saying that. We are not saying it. That's God's, direction. So these are some of the areas, like I told you, where we are trying to impact on a global level, so that the whole opinions and platforms could be created, new opinions can come up, and a new narrative and a vision can happen, so that we can, go where we are reaching, where God wants us, to bring heaven on earth, to bring people closer to joy and peace, and get systems to work on those lines.
Sure.
So these are some of the works which we are doing on a macro level.
That's great. Just wanted to find out, like, I know we've been talking about, even in the previous episode, about how things are moving at a micro level, and now we're talking about, it's a challenge globally and at a macro level. And you just mentioned that, sometimes the challenges with industries, with big business companies. So are there any steps being taken, like from your side or from, through your NGO, where you approach the people actually in business? Because we were discussing how some of the challenges are from their side.
Yes.
So like, you think that the same concept that you expose people at a grassroots level, how do people in such bigger companies respond to? Do they even respond, or is there a justification?
No, yeah, see, the thing is, these are futuristic work which we are trying. And to give you an example, there is a group called Extinction Rebellion in the UK, who work to combat climate change. So they want politicians to change. So they say love and rage. So they do disobedience, they superglue themselves, they do all sorts of, and they say it is Gandhian non-violent action. But now it's not the times of Gandhi. You disobey, you do protest. There are 5 circles of police per cordon, so you can't reach. So once you take you and me, you differentiate. You politicians, you have to stop doing it, but we don't change. So we need to. So our whole strategy should be inclusive. So our approach is, for this specific thing, see, we are going to meet the leaders. It's in the process. We were wanting to, through a leading school in Chennai, we were wanting to meet the chief ministers in India and welcome them into this posterity joy conscious movement. So they are also conscious of the joy of future generations, because every leader has a family, they have their own children, he doesn't want his grandchildren. So we should be able to touch that emotion. We have to be so precise. We can't protest. If we protest and say you're wrong, you change, you're the bad people, we are, then they will not even talk to you. So that is the speciality of Joyism, I believe, where it is a very inclusive, non-threatening, there's no disobedience, no confrontation. But all the same, it requires a lot of grace, I believe, and the wisdom of God to connect, like you said, with authorities, be it corporate or governmental, to see what is their thing which will make them turn around. Because finally they are also human beings. So just protesting and taking a confrontational attitude, disobedience, just because. So in fact, in our work, we call this neo-Gandhiism. There's non-violent and no protest also. our platform is joy, we connect with them. So we have just started this work. So our intention is to meet the G20 leaders and invite them into this posterity joy consciousness movement, so that they also work for their own children, so that together we need to get our act together. Uh, it makes sense, I'm sure you would make sense, because by divisiveness we are not going to get anywhere. So we need, but having said that, it is not a cakewalk either. It is, it's going to be, but it wouldn't be impossible, because I believe God wants everyone to be in this. Like, so we say Joyism is the birthright of every individual. It's not the birthright of only some and of others. It's the birthright of everyone. So the challenge is, how do we connect them? How do we connect a person like, who's warring against Ukraine, for instance? How do we connect them to understand the concerns of another nation? These are issues which we need to move ahead, and I believe God would open the ways if we ask, because like the scripture says, you don't get what you want because you don't ask right. So I believe if we ask right, God is there to open us new horizons for us to go forward.
Another question that I wanted to ask you is like, from your own words, I hear you saying that all that you do as an individual, as an NGO, springs out of, or rather, it is motivated out of love and joy. But looking at a very grim situation in our society, I mean, everywhere you see there's poverty. You see so many evils in the society. So, how do you still, rise above all these situations, or even as an organization, how do you motivate, your colleagues, or as an individual, how do you go above that and try to make a change, be it at a micro level or a macro level?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, in the sense, see, most people think life is survival, but I believe God doesn't expect us to just survive. He expects us to enjoy and rejoice always, as Apostle Paul says. And most of this poverty and whatever issues you mentioned are at the base of it, people stretching too much for materialistic things, because ultimately we need just 3 meals, we need one shelter. So there's a whole movement called minimalism. I don't know whether you've heard of it. So people are going towards minimalism. So the idea is you consume less and you do more. It is not that, when the person who's owning a BMW is also cribbing, like the person who is having a motorbike, to pay their EMIs. Both are finding it difficult. He is saying, I have to survive. Even the BMW is what? So I need more money. So somehow they want to raise. When you say somehow, then you don't know what they are doing. Like I was telling, the armament industry is not a way to raise money when you know you're doing destructive things to others. So the attitude, so we are putting a lot of emphasis on psychology. Joy is an aspect of positive psychology. So we are connecting with colleges, with psychology department, so that we are able to, right from health to business to governance, what is the psychology which is going to liberate, emancipate this world from its problems. So like for instance, if you take the least developed countries which are far less developed than India, who are struggling. Now, it's not that we should break them to consumerism and then give them and then take them. You can leapfrog them into, because we know, having got all the materialism, all our malls and all our, it's not giving us the satisfaction we need. People are still committing suicide. People are unhappy.
They're still wanting more.
Yeah, because they are in a culture of more, more, more. It's that's the problem with capitalism. So we are looking at democracy, excellence, and other areas, how people could shift from to minimalism. consume less, do more, and pursue their purpose in life. Find what is their purpose in life is not just gaining money. So it is, we need to teach them, we need to, create an awareness. They should taste it. So definitely, because it is, and one thing is, I believe an entrepreneurial spirit is the key, where everyone needs to look at whatever challenges, whether it's at home or business or life itself as an entrepreneur. A challenge should be converted to an opportunity, not only for a businessman, for a housewife, for a student, for everyone. It's like like they have the Internet of Things. So I have coined something like the entrepreneurship of everything. So everything needs to be looked entrepreneurially. Only then you don't get bogged down or sucked into that quagmire of whatever you're saying, the problems. So that gives you a buoyancy to come out of it and see how you could transform them.
So I know that the challenges that you face are so immense, and in a society like ours, every day has its own challenges. So if people actually wanted to come and be part of, Joyism, what are your suggestions, and how can they be part of this movement that you have started, be it environmental issues, civic issues, so many different issues that your NGO is part of. How
Hmm.
can a common man, or how can a student, be it a student, a college student, or because how can they be, how can they get engaged in the work that you do,
Mm,
or partner, if that's a better
yes.
word that we can
You
use.
know, even I think the work, our interview and the Lakeview Bible College, which you all represent, it's a good example of, that there is hope. There are people who are interested to, in the future of society, in authentic, future of society. But having said that, this is not, we are not selling pizzas. So people will not come and draw to us. So we go to them. But so we go to schools, we go to colleges, we connect with the alumni association and see how children can, so we have some program called civic leadership empowerment outreach. So we call it CLEO, and we give certificates for these students to become civic leaders. So the students are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So, and those who are interested to come, they kind of come in, see some of our work, who are attracted to come and work with us and be, so we keep doing our, and perhaps your session, this also would draw attention and interest among people, because people want change. They want a new narrative. Nobody wants, they want the status quo to be, changed. There are people who want that. I won't say that there's no one. And we are most welcoming to all these people. And yeah, but otherwise, the bulk of them, I believe our strategy would be to go to them and share their opportunities, share what they're missing out, share, because the COVID shook the people, so they know that the system cannot treat and protect them, with all their vaccinations and the doubts and all. So we are doing a lot of immunization through the power of joy, because joy is the highest positive energy, and once you practice that, and once you're living in that, there is no space for negative energy ingress. So a negative energy is the cause for 90% of the diseases, which they call as psychosomatic. So, but nobody, the medical industry doesn't talk about this, because they are only in the symptoms they want to make. I'm just giving you an example. They want to make money out of it. It's business. Health has become an industry, medical industry they call it. It's lost its noble, sheen as such. So, so we have to go to the people and explain. But now after the shaking, they want to know more. They want to see how they could improve their image. So we call this program as Joy Shield. how if you have joy, it will be a shield for you against all negative, which is basically hatred, pride, too much of greed, avariciousness. So people who are, who are practicing, like that's where we divide happiness and joy, because it's not that the corrupt and the other people who are doing the negatives, it's not that they are unhappy, they are happy, but they're not joyful. So for them to apprehend joy, they have to start with love. So right from school or to everywhere, this message has to be taken to them. It is not that they will, all of them. So our strategy is to reach out to people.
So, what I'm getting from you is however simple your message can be, or however cliched it can sound, but it seems to be very powerful. What you're saying is that, the only way that you can, have joy is to think about someone else, be it,
Exactly.
civic issues, be it environmental issues. So, most of our problems are probably related to that, where we're so self-oriented, just thinking about ourselves. But the moment we step out and start at least thinking as to
Yes.
how I can change the world around me, or
Exactly.
think about someone else,
Start
and the
from,
society
yeah,
at a larger level.
your street, as we say, how we have spent too long of, people withdrawing themselves. I'll just think of myself. I don't, there are many people who, like they say, the ant, I never borrow, or I never give.
I'm self-sufficient.
Yeah, but that's because we are organically connected.
Yes.
So unless, and we are missing out the friendship, and we are missing out on so many things. So in fact, on this World Friendship Day, we are planning to do the first Happiness Joy Summit in Chennai.
Oh, wow.
So because there is joy in friendship, so we are taking platforms like that to take this message to the people.
That's a great initiative, and we wish you well, and
Thank
I
you.
hope it really
Thank
goes
you.
well.